Welcome to the Artist Talk Accidental Photographer with Eldred Allen, which is presented in the context of the second installment of Pop-Up Horizon. I would like to first thank so much Eldred for being with us tonight and for accepting our invitation to give this conference, as well as welcoming you all and thank you for being here today. I would like to start by recognizing that laquelle celebrates the cultural traditions and creative expression of all Indigenous peoples of Canada and artists of fine crafts. Laquelle is situated on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanien'kehá:ka Mohawk Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters of Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations, laquelle respects the past, present, and future connections with all Indigenous and diverse communities of Canada. My name is Marie-Hélène No, and I am the Cultural Activities Coordinator at laquelle, and I will be your host for this evening. Before starting the conference, I will give a brief presentation of laquelle for those who are not familiar with us. laquelle is a nonprofit organization that aims to preserve, promote, and increase awareness for Inuit art, First Nation art, and fine craft from Canada. laquelle was founded in 1906 by two women from the English community of Montreal, Alice Peck and May Phillips. In 1949, laquelle was the first institution to start the Inuit art market. Inuit art is a major part of our collection at laquelle. laquelle has a center of documentation as well as archives available for consultation. We organize temporary exhibitions and cultural activities related to our programming. laquelle also has an art gallery, which brings together the work of established and emerging artists. For more information about laquelle and about the work of its gallery available for acquisition, its temporary exhibition, and its activities, I invite you to visit our website, laquelle.com. laquelle currently presents the exhibition Pudo Pudat Above the Limits, created in collaboration with the consultant Nak Alariak and in partnership also with Inuit Futures in Arts Leadership. laquelle also presents the second installment of the pop-up series, Horizon, an exhibition focused exclusively on Inuit art. It will be presented until June 6th, followed by the third installment of the pop-up series, Conversation, an exhibition in partnership with the Centre des Métiers du Cuir de Montréal and the Centre des Textiles Contemporains de Montréal. This evening, Eldred Allen will introduce us to his photographic practice, which explores many points of view through the use of the drone and handheld camera. He will explain how, unexpectedly, his fascination with the images produced with a UAV drone led him to the study of photography. He then will explore how he integrates this knowledge into the aerial imagery and videography. Capturing unprecedented images of Nunatiavut natural surroundings and everyday scenes that reflects his culture, Eldred shares his art in museums and galleries. The talk will conclude with a question period where you can learn more about the technique and process of Eldred. Thus, I invite you to think about your questions and put them in the chat during the talk. Eldred Allen, originally from Rigolette, Nunatiavut, has always been interested in photography, which he practiced from a young age. With an RPAS training certificate, unmanned aerial vehicle UAV operator, and an advanced diploma in geographic information science and cartography from the Center of Geographic Sciences, he honed his skills in still and aerial photography and founded Bird's Eye Inc. in 2016. His work featured in provincial magazines, national news outlets, regional news coverage, National Marine Project, and on the National Film Board of Canada. In 2019, he participated in the exhibition Nunatiavut, Our Beautiful Land at laquelle, and also in the virtual exhibition Looking Down from Up at Gallery 44, and might I add, recently Chromatic as well, exhibition that he participated at laquelle in this year. So without further delay, I am glad to introduce artist Eldred Allen. So I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction and the opportunity to talk tonight and share a little bit of my experience, I guess, and passion with flying drones, and also utilizing a handheld camera to capture imagery of lifestyle and scenery and wildlife and things of that sort that I'm fortunate enough to get out and see and photograph every day here in remote northern Labrador. So thank you very much, and I hope people find some of the images that I produce and capture interesting, and you know, it might showcase to you a part of the world that you've never seen or ever heard of before, and you'll get to see some of the unique views that I get to capture with my cameras.
I'm not even doubting about that. Would you like me to share the PowerPoint with everyone?
Sure, ready to get started.
All right.
So to start off, I guess I'll give everybody a little bit of context. As Mary Ellen mentioned, I'm from Rigolette, New Nashville, which is a small community of 300 people on the north coast of Labrador, and is illustrated here by the red dot that you see. So we're right on the east coast of Canada. And if you put up the next picture, this is the entire community. So this is an image that I captured of the community with one of my drones, and the red arrow is pointing to my house. So if everybody lean in and look at the screen real close, I'll wave to you and you can see me in the window. No, that's my entire community. So that's where, you know, currently I live, and I've grown up, and it's a small, you know, real tight-knit community nestled right on the water. So it's very scenic, and we're fortunate to have lots of different wildlife and, you know, interesting culture and people and stuff for me to get out and photograph. So I'll share some of that with you now through the remaining talk, and I've got lots of different examples of some of the images that I can capture right off my doorstep just here within the community. Go ahead to the next slide. So a little bit, a very loose kind of outline of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give it a little bit of background just on myself first, because the title, of course, of the talk is Accidental Photographer, and photography was really nothing that ever entered my radar prior to 2018. So I'll give a little bit of my background and stuff very quickly. Then I'll transition into the starting of my company, Bird's Eye Inc. And that was kind of, you know, as everybody I'm sure is aware, life takes a lot of zigzags and turns and things of that sort, and you end up somewhere you didn't expect to be. So Bird's Eye Inc. kind of led me into photography, and then also my route now as an artist. So as I mentioned, I grew up here in Rigolette, and you know, we've got an all grade school of K to 12 of about 60 people. So, you know, we're not a large community at all. But when I graduated high school, I decided to go off and, you know, so a kid from the 90s, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. So I went to university and got into the phys ed faculty to become a phys ed teacher. And I was only there for a year and decided, nope, this is not for me. So I still saw the value in education. So I said, I'll stick it out and pick something new and stuff. So I ended up graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, actually. So straight after university, I came back to Rigolette, and because I didn't specialize in anything specifically and I wasn't working in anthropology, I kind of started working in various different fields. So I started off in policing. I did that for a number of years. I did wildlife management and wildlife enforcement for a number of years. Myself and my girlfriend at the time moved to Ottawa. We lived and I worked there for a year. So, you know, doing a little bit of everything and bouncing around a little bit of everywhere. And I ended up going straight from Ottawa and right into Voisey's Bay. And I don't know if people are aware, but Voisey's Bay is a remote fly-in mine site right up in northern Labrador. So you fly in there for 2 weeks, you work, and then you travel home for 2 weeks. So that was fine for a while. I did that for 3 years, but you know, I kind of never found the one thing that I was interested in and what I wanted to work at, where, you know, I kind of, my university plans kind of fell off. And I was bouncing around between jobs. So when I was up in the remote mine site, I kind of did a bit of reflection and tried to think, what do I enjoy doing? So I said, I enjoy computers. I enjoy a GPS. So I started Googling, and what kind of careers kind of match up with that. And I fell on geographic information systems. So for anybody who doesn't know, GIS is computer mapping. Essentially, you're consuming digital information, and you can do analysis and manipulation of digital data and produce maps and help organizations or companies solve problems that they're working on. So I decided, well, that sounds right up my alley. So I looked and found a program offered in Nova Scotia. So I quit my job in Voisey's Bay at 35, which was a very scary step, of course, to take. And I went back to school. So I went to school in Nova Scotia for a year and got my degree in geographic information systems, and then was very fortunate because it's it's not a common job, of course, in Northern Labrador, but the GIS position had become vacant, and I was able to work from my community. So I was very happy with that for a few years, and I actually worked in that job for 5 years. And I guess photography still never on my mind, never anything I ever thought of. But I'm into dirt biking as well, so off-road bikes. So I was on a forum online, and Google, of course, is my friend here, being remote Northern Labrador, always online searching for different things. And I found a gentleman riding on a motorcycle through the woods, and he had a drone automatically following him and filming him. And I was extremely intrigued because I was always interested in remote control something, but never had anything. So I started, Googling again and found out what model of drone he used. And once I found it, I said, I'm at a place in my life now where I can afford one of these. So I purchased one. And this was in April of 2016. And the neat thing is, I guess, being a remote Northern Labrador and being a GIS specialist, or someone who can consume digital data, I realized pretty quickly that a drone essentially is a tool, more than something that's interesting to fly. It's a tool as well that can be used to fly and capture digital data that I could then consume in my GIS systems. So now you can use a drone to fly over project sites and take images and pictures and, produce sophisticated 3D models and do analysis and stuff like that. So Northern Labrador is very remote, and it's hard to find good, digital information for where I'm to. So I said, there's a niche here in the market. So potentially, I could use a drone for more than just flying. So I said, maybe I'll start a company offering drone services where we could, if there are projects going on where they might want to do project site management and stuff like that. It was only a month, I think, from purchasing my drone that I had that idea, and I started a company. So if you want to go to the next slide, I started my company, Bird's Eye Inc. So I registered my company. I bought my drone in April, and I registered my company in May. I really saw, this could be something that's, people could really use. So we became a drone service provider, and I coupled that then with my GIS background. So you can go to the next slide if you have next picture. And so what we did was data capture and analysis. So in this image here, all of those rectangles and green dots are individual pictures. So that's a flight grid that my drone flew, capturing just 2-dimensional pictures. And I was able to process those images in what's called a photogrammetry software, which generates 3D data from 2-dimensional images. And below it here, you can see there's a 3D model generated. So that was what we were offering from my company. So again, me making quick decisions, I was like, if I'm going to start a company, I'm going to have to work at this with all my effort. So I bought my drone in April. I quit my job in December. I said, no, I'm going to focus on my company full time. And so, we offer drone photography and videography, data capture and analysis. And go to the next slide. And so this was a first job that I did with my drone. As I mentioned, you know, right now in my mind in 2016, the drone is a data capture tool. So this is the very first job I did with my new company. It was an inspection of some damage that had occurred at a water tower. So this kind of proved to me, you know, someone saw value in the services I offered and they were willing to pay me to do it. So it was, you know, it's successful so far. You can go to the next slide. And this here is another example of using my drone for project management. So there's an archaeological dig just outside of the community here. And it might be really hard for you to see on screen, but there's a little thin yellow line running the distance of the whitish dug area. So within the model that I generate, I'm able to do calculations. So I can, you know, I'll sit up at my desk and determine how long that dig was and, you know, how deep the holes are and stuff like that. So it's a real value add for different clients and stuff working in remote northern Labrador. So you go to the next slide. And one of the great values of using a drone is, of course, for cultural preservation. With climate change and stuff here in the north, you know, there's a lot of different important cultural locations that are at risk of loss due to deterioration. So these 3D mod buildings here in the middle of the image are the Hopedale mission buildings that the Moravians built in Hopedale, a few communities up the coast from me. And they're the oldest wooden structures in North America. And, you know, seeing the value in that, I went out and used my drone and captured pictures and generated a 3D model of these structures. So, of course, they're digitally preserved now if anything ever happened to them. But you can also do analysis and stuff. And it's a great way to allow people to see these structures and stuff. So this is the 3D model consumed in Google Earth. So, you know, all of the landscape around it is 2-dimensional, but my 3D model is 3-dimensional. So it adds great context to the location. You can go to the next slide. So up until that point, everything that you saw was me using a drone for data capture. And I never ever saw it as a camera. I saw it as a data collection tool. And at a point of offering these drone services, I had a client in late 2018 say, you know, you capture, you know, great data from the air. Can you also capture some handheld pictures for us as well from the ground? And, you know, the only camera I had was my phone. And I'm like, you know, that's not good enough quality as a business. And I was really contemplating, I don't know if you can see here behind me, this large drone that I have. I was like, that has a really great quality camera on it. I can get my assistant to hand hold it, you know, carry the drone around and just hold it on the ground, and I can take pictures with it. And I was thinking, you know, this is not, I'm not going to look very professional doing that either. So I decided to get a handheld mirrorless camera. So I was just, you know, again, online trying to determine what would work good for me. I wanted something because, you know, we travel on small airplanes and stuff here. I want something small and compact and still going to give me great image quality. So I settled and I decided to purchase a Fuji X-T2. And I'd never owned a camera like this before. Zero knowledge about photography and how to operate a camera like this. So what I did was, when I ordered the camera, I said, if I'm going to have that camera, I have to be proficient in using it. So I started online again, YouTube and Google, and trying to learn as much as I could about photography, how to operate the camera, and also how to compose pictures and take interesting pictures and stuff like that. Because I, of course, want to provide to my clients the best images possible. So I ordered this camera in August, and I actually had a client, and I had the opportunity to travel to the Torngat Mountain National Park, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world, right up in northern Labrador. Amazing, huge fjords and landscape, and, you know, polar bears and stuff like that. And this camera, I was tracking it, was in Montreal when I left to go on this trip. So I said, well, I'll just take my iPhone. That's all I've got. And what you see on the screen here now is my first attempts at being a photographer, because I knew the camera was coming. So I started to try to learn. And I was at that time learning from YouTube and landscape photographers. So I really had in my mind, and what I was, trying to learn then was leading lines, foreground, midground, background, trying to get interesting compositions and stuff, framing. And this is one of the first images I took, and I was trying at the time, and it's, these are failed attempts and very bad photos. But trying to use, the lines in the rock in the foreground kind of lead your eye through, and there's a woman there, which gives it some context, and it's a terrible image, but these are my very first attempts at being a photographer. You can go to the next one. And again, something in the foreground, a little flower. And if you can tell on your computer screen as you're looking, the background, the mountain in the background, which, is a large part of the image as well, is out of focus. And not have enough experience about photography and how camera works, I didn't know why that was happening. It kind of looked neat and stuff, but not knowing enough, I was taking pictures, and there were things happening in the pictures that I couldn't explain and I hadn't learned yet. You can go to the next picture. Again, talking about those fjords and beautiful landscape. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world, and this is my attempt in photography to capture that. And so, I thought, the drawing fish is really interesting. There's amazing landscape in the background, but then I've got parts of the boat and wires going through, and it's terrible photography. So my training at this point is zero, and I'm trying to learn. You can go to the next one. Same thing. You can see the landscape photographer. For some reason, I thought you got to get low to get foreground in your shot. So this is my foreground. There's no difference between the foreground and the midground. And you can go to the next one. It's just more terrible examples. And sometimes there might be a happy coincidence where it kind of worked. I've got leading lines on the right-hand side of the image, and there's a subject in the background. And so I was very proud of this picture. Trying to use different focus points and stuff like that. And I thought this one was really successful. You can go to the next picture. And up until this point, as I mentioned, my drone I use as a data collection tool. And whenever I got it up and flying it, I was generally always just using the camera in fully automatic because I didn't know anything about it at the time. And I was usually just capturing video. So the next three pictures you want to see on screen are not even actually pictures, but they're screen grabs that I captured from video because they look nice. And I didn't know enough about photography with the drone. As I mentioned, it was just a data capture tool. So you can go to the next picture. Really interesting subject, the local dog team race that we still have here. People still raise dog teams and stuff like that. And we have festivals where they have races in the spring. So again, this is just another screen grab of a video. You can go to the next picture. And this is probably one of my I really enjoy this picture, but again, it's only a screen grab from a video, and I'm really disappointed because this was in 2016 when I just had my drone, so zero knowledge about photography, composition, and stuff like that. But looking at it now, I'm thinking, if I had my time back and I could just get there with a little bit of training, I could have got something really beautiful out of that. But it's still an interesting capture, I find, but it's really low quality where it's only a screen grab. You can go to the next one. And so, as I mentioned, where I ordered this camera and I was having it, it was coming, I really had to do a deep dive into understand how to operate the camera. And so I found out pretty quickly online that everybody was talking about exposure. And so how to get your correct exposure. So, to have, correctly the darks, having the dark parts of the picture correctly lit and the bright parts of the picture not too bright and stuff. So how to expose the light correctly. And with the camera, you have three methods of doing that, which are your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. So how you interplay.
Sorry, I will ask you to, say to us a bit about shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, because I think most of us don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I was certainly in that seat too. When I purchased this camera, had zero idea of what they actually were and how they function, because each of them play a dual role in photography. So your shutter speed is just how fast your shutter opens and closes to let light into the sensor. So what that then reflects to is how much movement is shown in your scene. So I don't know if a lot of you, everybody, of course, uses their iPhone to take pictures. And you might get into a kind of a dully lit room somewhere. And you're like, oh, my daughter is hugging my dog. This makes such a beautiful picture. And you take out your iPhone and quickly capture a picture. And you look at it and it's blurry. And you don't know why. It looks so beautiful in front of you. But because the scene is really dark and your camera is controlling all of these elements, your shutter speed, what it does is it decides the room is really dull lit, so it needs to let in more light. So it slows down your shutter speed, so it closes more slowly, letting in more light. But because that happens, then it results in blur in your picture. So if you ever take a picture in a dull lit room and your image is blurry, that's why your iPhone is adjusting your shutter speed to try to let in more light, but that results in blurry pictures. The aperture is just the opening, so the opening in front of your lens. So if you have a wide aperture, you have a very wide opening in your lens and it lets in a lot of light. And if you have a closed aperture, it's really small and it lets in a little bit of light. And so what that affects is what's called your depth of field in your picture. So the image I showed earlier with that little flower in the foreground, the background was blurry. That's a result of apertures, because I focus close. If you have a wide aperture, you have a narrow depth of field, and so that means only your flower is going to be in focus, but things beyond that are going to be out of focus. So that's what everybody really likes. You ever take a picture of your friend with your iPhone and you've got the nice blurry background and you're like the portrait mode? That's aperture. So it's having the person in focus, but then the background out of focus. That's what's controlled by your aperture. And your ISO is just sensitivity. It's a false sensitivity to light. So if you're in a really dark room, your shutter speed is low, just to the point where you're not going to get any blur. You got your aperture open up as big as it can be to let in the most amount of light, and you're still not getting enough light. You can increase your ISO, which means your sensor becomes more, it kind of introduces fake light almost. And again, you take a picture in a dark room with your iPhone, you look at it, and if it's not blurry, it looks really grainy and dirty. The higher your ISO goes up, it introduces that grain. So that's what can make your images not look very good when you're taking them on your iPhone. So there's it's almost a dance and a play between your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. So, if I'm out and I'm wanting to take a picture of a bird and I want, it to freeze the action of the bird flying so you can see all the detail and its feathers and everything, I'll have a really fast shutter speed of like 1/2000th of a second. So it closes within a 2,000th of a second to freeze the bird in flight. And so you can see all the details. But then if I want to say, show a little bit of, become a little bit more artistic and stuff and show motion in the bird as it's flying, I can decrease my shutter speed. And as it's flapping its wing really fast, if I shoot at say 1/250th of a second, the flapping wings could become blurred. So then, the body, because it's not really moving, is in focus, but the wings are blurred. So I can start to show motion in the picture. So, you start to learn how to play with shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, and then you can become artistic kind of in your shots, and you can start to show things different. And if I want to take a picture of something in focus here and out of focus in the background, or if I want to take a picture where everything is in focus, I'll adjust my aperture. So those are the three most important aspects of what you can control on a camera to get the correct exposure. But then when you also start to learn how to get the correct exposure, you can play with them to start showing different things in your photography. And you'll see some examples throughout as I'm talking here now going on. So that was everyone's a professional photographer. So as I mentioned, just understanding those camera basics, and then also you know, white balance, aspect ratio of your pictures, JPEG versus RAW, where the focus and stuff like that. There's all of these different things that I was trying to learn. And it was kind of at this point where a light bulb went off in my head that the drone is a flying camera. You know, I can adjust the shutter speed and the aperture and stuff on my drone, but where I didn't have that background in photography, I didn't know how to do that. So I was using it as that data collection tool, but now learning how, you know, how these things interplay with each other, I realized that the drone is a camera and I could start to adjust things with the drone as well to give me better photographs. So in this image that you see here, it's one of the very first pictures I took with my drone, and I was extremely excited about it and pleased with it. But again, it's a terrible photo. There's a little tiny bit of light, and there is a subject in there. You probably can't see it or tell what it is. Just where the mouse is circling there. So that's the subject, but you know, you can't tell. So if you go to the next slide. So to go hand in hand with camera basics, I also had to understand photography basics. So that means how, you know, light plays such an important role in photography, composition, what you decide to have in the picture that you're taking, you know, those moments that are special, you know, maybe it's just the moment your child is kissing, you know, their grandmother or something like that. If you capture things like that, adds greatly to your pictures. How to show like movement of time, as I mentioned, palette, which is, you know, utilization of colors and wonder, you know, interesting and beautiful things that people are interested in seeing. So you can know how to take a you can know how to operate a camera with shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, but that doesn't mean that you're going to take good pictures. Like I take a lot of bad pictures. And because, you know, I know how to use the camera now, but the most important part of photography is understanding the photography basics of how to get that interesting composition and how to utilize light to take your viewers on a journey in your pictures, and, you know, maybe elicit an emotion or something when they're looking at your picture. And everything that I do with photography is self-taught. You know, Google and YouTube is really important for me. But one of the most important things that really, you know, those light bulb moments that go off. I was watching a YouTuber who talks about the basics of photography, and, you know, talks about important photographers. And he said, you know, in language, you communicate using verbs and nouns and putting them into sentences and things of that sort. And an image is utilization of lines and shapes and patterns and form and colors and textures. So there's an equivalent to them in that, you know, for you to talk well to someone, for them to understand what you're saying, you put your verbs and stuff together into sentences. And so with photography, you kind of want to talk with a photograph, but your language in photography is putting together those lines and shapes and textures and colors. So that's the important thing with photography, is learning how to put those things together and talk with your imagery. And you know, so I'm still, of course, on that path. And I realized also post-processing, which is editing your pictures afterwards, because a camera sensor can't ever capture what your eyes can see when you press the shutter. Usually, you know, you have to edit them a little bit afterwards as well. So you can go to the next picture. So this is a comparison. It's pretty much almost the exact same vantage point, taken a couple of years apart. So the picture on your left has that gazebo in there, but you can't see it. And, you know, it's very dark and there's really no color. But after trying to put these components of photography together, you know, I've gotten much closer to the gazebo, and, you know, during sunset. So now you've got a definite subject that your eye is drawn to immediately in the center of the picture. And then with the sunset, they're illuminating, you know, the hill that's closer. You've got that, so your eye kind of explores everything that's lit. But then you've got the hill behind it that's in shade, so it's creating layers, and you've kind of got diagonal lines that pull your eye through the picture. And also then with the sun setting, you've got the sun rays that kind of lead your eye through the picture as well. So it's kind of, you know, you always want to lead your viewer on a journey through your pictures. And so I hope this is a demonstration, you know, that I'm learning a little bit and trying to put that into practice. Is not to say that the picture on the right is still a good picture, but, you know, I'm still trying to, I'm on the road to putting all that together. You know, the
Don't
next
be
picture.
too humble.
So, so why photography for me? And the thing is, as I mentioned, I purchased my camera because I had a client interested in, you know, me taking handheld pictures. But what I came to quickly realize, and as this quote states, is the camera is an instrument that teaches people how to see without a camera. Because I'm sure most of you are, you know, you're used to the place where you live. You walk to the store, you might walk past 2 streets and you don't even realize that you kind of, you know, come out of your, wherever you were to, and you look back, you know, I don't remember walking this far. You know, you kind of got blinders on, you're going through life and stuff like that. And that's what I was like here. You know, I go to the store, I would go to our remote cabin and our boat and stuff. And, you know, we got whales and birds and all kinds of marine life and stuff, but I wasn't really seeing it because it was part of my everyday life. But when I picked up a camera, I realized that it made me slow down. I had to start looking at things again and kind of, you know, composing pictures and picking out interesting things to take images of. So it really opened my eyes, and now I see where I live. You know, if I'm picking up my kids from school now, you know, there might be a blade of grass sticking out through the snow, but I'm looking at it and I'm, you know, seeing the way that the sun is shining on it, the shadow it's creating on the snow. And I'm always out looking at the clouds and the sunsets and, you know, birds that are outside my door. So even if I don't have a camera, my eye now is trained to see that way. So that's why I kind of became so interested in photography. When I got the camera, it's become a passion now because it's taught me how to see again. And I really enjoy going out and having the opportunity to potentially open other people's eyes to where they live because they may have their blinders on. So this image here is just some berry bushes in the late fall. So this is in the early morning. So those berry bushes are lined in frost on the outside of each of the leaves. So, you know, people here are always out picking berries and stuff, and they will probably never ever see, you know, really, oh, it's a frosty morning, it must be cold, and just go about their business. But to get down with the camera and kind of inspect it and try to, you know, manipulate what you're looking at into becoming something that makes people see it again, I enjoy that. That's why I think I enjoy photography so much. And so it's really morphed beyond my business to, you know, it's photography is what I want to be doing all the time, and I'm constantly trying to learn and improve. And so you can go to the next picture. This is another example. These are it's a really interesting picture, and I really enjoy it. And I think why I enjoy it so much is these are actually a group of trees that are covered in a thick layer of we had a lot of freezing rain, so the trees are all bent over and stuff like that. And everybody who looks at this picture has kind of a different interpretation of what they see. And I really enjoy that. And it's one of the things I enjoy about photography is kind of the abstractness of it and presenting the landscape everybody looks at constantly in kind of an abstract way to make them look at it and kind of think about it again. And so personally, I titled this image The Horseman because what I see is I see 2 black horses with 2 riders on their backs, and then there's 1 horse led down in the snow in front of them. So for me, I think of the Lord of the Rings and the ring race. I don't know if anybody might know of the, you know, those famous books by Tolkien, but that's what I see when I see that picture.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. So this one here I call moon seals, which is, I found the background because this here is ice in the springtime, and there are 3 seals up sunbathing, but the ice kind of look like the surface of the moon. And so, you know, people here they'll go and they'll see seals on the ice as they're driving on their snowmobiles and stuff. And so you just see them, they're led down, but with the drone and to get up and present it in that different way, they kind of, you know, you kind of got to look at it and kind of think of what it is and what you're looking at. And I enjoy that. That's, again, what photography has given me, is opened my eyes to looking at everything around me and looking at it with a, you know, fresh perspective. So you can go to the next one. And this one here, this a very low fog over the ice where those seals actually are. So there is an open body of water there in the summertime, but it's all ice now. But I woke up one morning and it was foggy. And normally, you know, I would wake up and look out my window, oh, it's foggy today. But knowing, you know, that I've started photography, I was like, this could be really something neat to see from up high. So of course I get on my skidoo and I drive up on this hill, and I got to see the landscape in a perspective I never would have seen before. And I find that, you know, the interesting thing about photography, it's gotten me out and it's connected me again to where I live. And this here is an inukshuk up on a hill. So, you know, traditionally Inuit have used inukshuks for guidance. So it's, you know, down below you're kind of shrouded in fog and stuff. But, you know, if you look up, you can, there's something to guide you along the way. And then the next picture. And these are just examples. We can go through these a little bit quicker, but again, it's a demonstration of how I like to present the landscape that we see every day in kind of abstract ways to make people think. So, you know, this one here might be extremely obvious, the first one, and this one too. They're taken moments apart, but that's just ice drifts, snow drifts. So it's, you know, when you present it in the black and white like that, it can kind of look like sand dunes and stuff, but it's just ice that I got down close and kind of try to present in a different way. So you can go ahead. Again, just frosty willows that people would see normally, but I really enjoy the kind of abstract black and whites. I really enjoy that image as well. And you know, this here is what we call a spruce partridge. It's a term again, and there's a family of them that kind of live in the woods next to our cabin. And the thing about photography as well is not only that it opens your eyes, but it teaches you patience, because if anybody is familiar with a partridge, they don't really do anything. You know, they might sit on the ground in a branch for hours at a time and hardly move. And so, you know, as a photographer, you got to be patient, and, you know, just to see it stretch its leg and push its wing back, it was really exciting. I waited for so long for it. So it's kind of, it presents that partridge that everybody sees normally in kind of an abstract and artistic way. I enjoy that. And the next one. And again, it's just, you know, a happenstance of being in a beautiful place. I took, you know, this, everybody that sees this picture, that comment to me, they really enjoy it with the layers through the trees and the fog. But I just stepped out my door here that's on my left. It was foggy one day and I walked out on my deck and I took this picture right off my front deck. So it's, you know, I'm fortunate to live in a place where I can capture scenes like this just on a moment's notice. Next picture. Again, talking about shutter speed, you know, my shutter speed was set at a setting where, you know, the goose itself wasn't moving very much, but he was flapping his wings. So because they were flapping so fast, you get a bit of motion blur. So it, you know, as opposed to if I had it really, the shutter speed really fast and it was frozen, just that little bit of motion adds a little bit of interest. You can kind of, you know, then the viewer is looking at the picture thinking, okay, it's flapping its wings, because you can see that motion. So it you know, it kind of tells a story through the image as well. And I enjoyed that picture too. I'm probably going to say I enjoy them all. It's kind of narcissistic, I guess. But again, this here is a demonstration of just looking at things differently. This here is just the wing of one of those partridges. So it was, as opposed to a spruce partridge, this was a white one that everybody here hunts in the wintertime. And I had one, and where I was cleaning it, and I had cut off its wing and I had tossed it off just into the trees and wasn't really paying attention. And I looked over while I was picking the partridge, and I could see just the way that it had stood up in the snow, and it was so interesting. I had to go back and get my camera. And then the sun was setting and there was a really low drift of snow, and I wanted to have my shutter speed at a point where, you know, the feathers were blowing, but they weren't blowing as fast as the snow behind it. So I wanted to capture the movement of snow, but still have the wing in focus. So it really, you know, and it was illuminated by the setting sunlight. It kind of, you know, my wife has said, you know, it kind of shows that the wing is almost like it's moving. It's making things move in the picture. Next picture. Again, that same photographer who I learned from, you know, how to speak with the picture through like lines and stuff like that. Another one is what I learned from him is that you've got to be aware and look at the familiar. Again, it's, you know, things that you look at every day, but you look at them and you study them with a different eye to try to identify kind of lines and stuff like that. So these are a couple of ulus that we have on our cupboard in our kitchen. And after I watched that video, I just went out and I picked up my camera and I started walking through the house and trying to, you know, looking at things again that I'm aware of, but look at them with a different eye. And I really like the soft shadow and the straight lines and stuff. And it's the curved lines of the ulus. It was really interesting. So, you know, just trying to put into practice those things that I've been learning. You can go ahead again. Again, I call this one the hunter. This is actually a picture of my wife, and she's holding 2 Canada geese because we hunt geese in the spring and the fall here. So we were actually going up to pick the geese. And of course, I take my camera with me always wherever I go. And there was just a pond nearby. And as she was walking, I saw her reflection. I was like, stop where you're to and hold the geese out. And it's just, you know, when you look at it, you kind of can't, you got to think about what it is a little bit. It's her reflection in the pond. But, you know, inukshuk and stuff is really important in our culture as well for, like I saw earlier, guidance and stuff like that. And if you look in the shadow, it looks like the shadow is all made of small rocks. So it kind of looks like that could be an inukshuk as well. And so I really enjoyed that picture too. Next picture. Again, another, you know, kind of similar to moon seals, but, you know, just a different perspective from the drone getting up. And again, it's also again, with photography, it's patience. You know, those seals were led there on the ice and it looked nice, but you kind of need that little moment, you know, that's something special to happen. And so when that one seal yawned, I was like pressing that, trying to take the picture frantically so I could capture that. And it's really neat because, you know, when people look at this picture, they're like, hey, that seal's laughing. You know, there must have been a funny joke between them and stuff. So it's just to capture those little unique moments, kind of add something special to your pictures. Can go to the next one. And we can go through these a little bit more quick now because I know we're going to run out of time.
Yes, we have 10 minutes. So I'm going to go
faster. Yeah, you can go faster. Again, these are just, you know, scenic shots from around my community. And this here, I really like this one just because it's that different abstractness. These are juniper trees in the fall captured from my drone looking straight down. And it's just a frosty piece of grass with a beautiful sunrise. So again, these are all examples of, you know, just having to stop and look at the landscape and just another day from up on the hill. Self-portrait of myself picking one of those partridges. This is my wife knitting at the cabin, just trying to show, you know, a traditional skill that people have here in kind of an artistic light. You go again. Yep, next picture. And, you know, people hunt seals here, of course, for food. And, you know, they use the skins to make crafts and stuff like that, or make boots. And just wanted to go and capture that as well. So that's one of the things with the drone. Once I started to learn about that as a tool for photography as well, it gives you that new perspective, and you can get up and you can look at the landscape around you and you can identify different shapes and lines and patterns. And there's a huge element of wonder because, you know, everybody's used to seeing that perspective from standing on the ground, but when you show them that new perspective and vantage point that a drone gives, there's always that element of wonder. And that was one of the things that really intrigued me about the drone when I first got it. Is, you know, when I looked at that first video and I was like, I'm watching the nature of things, but it was just, you know, footage of that I first captured. And so these are a skull of harp seals just swimming on their backs. You know, it's something I had never seen them from this vantage point before. And just, you can go through here because I've got an example of the different perspective it gives later in the presentation. It's just identifying those, you know, abstract lines and stuff. So this here is an example of that. again with the trees. Go ahead. Just another angle of those trees again. So this here is what I enjoy doing as well with being a handheld and drone photographer, is kind of the juxtaposition of what you see from the ground and then what you see from the air. So, you know, everybody's used to seeing from the ground vantage point, or in this case here from my boat. You know, you see seals. These are those heart seals swimming on their backs, and when they swim, it's mostly just their nose out of the water, so they're breathing. And this is a, you know, picture I captured, or image I captured with my handheld camera. But if you go to the next picture, this is the same skull of heart seals captured from my drone. So this is them swimming on their backs, and it looks like they're, you know, completely out of the water, but it's just where the drone can see them so well from that vantage point. I enjoy doing that handheld and drone photography comparison of the same subject. Let's go to the next one. And there's just a few examples here of how I do that with different subjects as well. Go to the next picture. Yeah. So this here is a minke whale. So I just stood on the wharf, and a minke whale lunged out feeding, and everybody's used to seeing the minke whale that way. But then the image on the right is from my drone, and you can see his mouth open as he's kind of scooping up fish. It's just, you know, when people see that image from the drone, it really excites them, because, you know, they've seen whales all their life here, but they've never seen them from that vantage point. Go to the next one. Again, same thing. There's a, you know, some context to the landscape. There's that caribou on the left-hand picture is there in the foreground, and then, you know, the base camp of the Tongat Mountain National Park in the background. But then this here is the same caribou taken looking straight down. So this is caribou lost in shadow. So, you know, this image was taken just before or after the one on the left. So just that different perspective, it changes the images so much. And, you know, the image on the right, caribou lost in shadow, it's got that abstractness to it again. You're kind of looking at it, trying to figure out what it is. Next picture. And this here is just my brother's boat on the left and looking straight down at my brother's boat on the right. And I'm really enjoy this picture and quite proud of it, because it made it on the cover of the Inuit Art Quarterly for their one of their issues, their water issue. So really proud of that picture, and I really enjoy being able to hold it and see it. So, you know, I'm starting to get a little bit of recognition. People are starting to see some of my works and, you know, enjoying them a little bit. So it always gives you a little bit of extra boost to want to get out and take some more pictures. Go to the next one. And so, you know, I never ever set out to be a photographer, and I never ever seen myself as a photographer. So up until this exhibition here, which happened in 2019, I had been capturing pictures for a year up until that point, and I just saw it as something I enjoyed doing. And so I was taking pictures and sharing them on social media and stuff like that. And, you know, never ever in a million years thought of myself as an artist or anything. But one of my photographer friends from another community said, you know, there's a call for artworks for an exhibition that's happening in Montreal. Have you ever thought of submitting any of your pictures? I was like, oh, well, you know, maybe I will. So I submitted some pictures and was very fortunate to have my first exhibition at laquelle with the Nuts with Our Beautiful Land. And so there's two images I had at that exhibition, which are skull of heart seals here and caribou lost in shadow. And the one behind there on the wall. And so after that one, people start seeing your work, and I kind of, you know, this was my first step kind of to becoming an artist and entering the art world, and you know, having to self-identify as an artist as well. So you can go to the next one. So just months after that, it was in an exhibition at Gallery 44, which is the next slide. And so it was in conjunction with the Inuit Art Quarterly called Looking Down From Up. So it focused on drone photography, and also there was a great interest in my 3D modeling and stuff as well. So it was an online exhibition that you can search if you'd like. There's myself and 4 other Inuk photographers from throughout Canada. So you can go on and appreciate their beautiful works as well. So after that exhibition, you know, people are starting to see and appreciate the work a little bit, and it kind of snowballs on, I guess, from there. And I've been very fortunate. The new Comayuk, which is the new center at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, they had their inaugural exhibition this year at the opening of the center, Anua, and I was very fortunate to be asked to have 2 pieces at the exhibition at the opening. And so they chose 2 of my 3D models because, you know, the theme of the show almost is like, it's a little bit futuristic and stuff like that. And it's a demonstration that contemporary Inuit artists have, you know, moved kind of beyond a little bit and are using different mediums to create art as well. You know, to the next one. And so again, as was previously mentioned by Mary Helen, I was in chromatic as well with Caribou Lost in Shadow. And next one. And so I'm also in an exhibition now this fall from August to December called Regeneration, which is at the Bonavista Biennial down in Newfoundland. So it's they're exhibiting the works of 7 artists from Northern Labrador, and I was very fortunate to have 4 of my works selected to be at the exhibition. So this one here, which is another seal shot from another year. And so the focus was kind of on people's connection with the land and stuff like that. So, you know, seals are, of course, very important. You can go to the next one. And you can just cycle through these ones pretty quickly. This here is just my wife cleaning a salmon on the shoreline. So, you know, we take a lot from the land here and harvest a lot of our food from the land.
That's
and
already...
so that's fine. It was just 2 other images at the exhibition. So I know I'm a long-winded talker, so I want to leave some time for questions as well. So, you know, accidental photographer, I never set it on this path at all, and it's kind of just something that snowballed and it's become a passion, and, you know, I'm constantly trying to learn. One of the biggest challenges, of course, is, you know, I'm completely self-taught, and, you know, I'm reliant on things I can learn online. So I'd love to have a bit of more exposure and stuff, and to grow as a photographer is something that I'm really interested in.
Well, your presentation was amazing, and we have great comments coming in and a few questions. So I will start. We'll take like 2 minutes for a question. I know we are a bit out of time, but I'll take those 2 minutes. So there was Jessica who was asking about who is the artist that you mentioned while speaking of the hulus, because you had the photo of the hulus. So do you remember the artist you were talking about at that moment?
Is it the one that the artist or the YouTube artist that I'm currently watching that's kind of teaching me to see and stuff now? Because I can't recall like who made the ulus, but the person that I'm learning from currently, he's got a YouTube channel called The Photographic Eye. So he's great because he talks about the concepts of photography, how to implement those. He doesn't focus on, you know, cameras and gear and stuff. It's trying to teach you to be a photographer.
Okay, that's good. That's a good cue for those who want to become photographer as well. And I have a fun comment from Michael Uberman saying, Eldred, we met you at laquelle in 2019 and purchased your harp seals artwork and love it. So that's good. That means you're in great collection and people like your work. It is wonderful that you have taught yourself of take photograph in a practical way. Are you teaching others as well? Yes.
I did. There's a lady here doing research, and she was doing it to use photography to tell stories of, you know, change and things people are going through here in the community. So I did actually hold a workshop over 2 days, just focus on those 2 concepts that I spoke about earlier, is understanding camera basics and then understanding photography basics. So I taught them, you know, the issues that they might run into and how shutter speed, aperture and stuff all play together, and then composition as well. So I did teach that group, and there's not a lot of photographers here. You know, it's a community of 300 people and stuff like that. So there's people here have an interest, but I don't, there's nobody really showing the type of interest I am, and I feel I have a lot to learn. I'm sure I've got some stuff I can teach people now as well, but I'd like to learn from someone as well. But giving back and teaching, I enjoy that too. So I often talk to like school kids and stuff like that, and talk to them about photography. I enjoy doing that.
You will see also, more you teach, the more you know that while teaching, you're the one who learned the most because you have to know perfectly
Yeah.
what you explain. So that's
Yes,
something
that's
good
right.
too. Yeah. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and also, of course, Eldred, thank you so much. You are amazing. Your presentation was really fascinating. And you know, some people say, you say that it's a bad photo, but people said actually in the chat, beautiful photo. Like they still enjoyed the photo from your beginning. So I guess it's a bit, personal. So it depends for everyone. But I can definitely see a big change in the perspective that you have through the years. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the new work that you'll be doing, and I'll keep watching you grow as an artist and as a person. And thank you again, and I wish everyone a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone who attended.